It happened on a Sunday morning, the kind that used to mean pancakes, music from the radio, and my daughter's laughter filling the kitchen. But not anymore. These days, the house was too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you hear every tick of the clock, every breath of loneliness you try to ignore. When the knock came, I hurried to the door, smiling before I even opened it. It had been weeks since I'd seen her. "My baby," I said, reaching out, but she brushed past me like I was part of the furniture. Her perfume hit me first. Expensive, bold, the kind of scent that doesn't belong in a house like mine. She stood in the middle of my little living room, looking around like it was the first time she'd really seen it. The sagging couch, the faded curtains, the peeling paint I hadn't been able to afford to fix. Then she sighed. "Mom, this place is depressing." I tried to laugh it off. "Well, it's home," I said softly, rubbing my hands together. "I know it's not much, but it keeps me warm." She turned to me, her face sharp, impatient. "That's the problem, Mom. You've settled for this. You live like a—" She paused, her lip curling. "Like a pathetic old woman who gave up." The word hit me before I could even process it. Pathetic. For a moment, I just stood there. I didn't even blink. My hands, still holding the dish towel, trembled. I wanted to say something. Defend myself. Remind her of everything I'd done for her. But the words wouldn't come. I just watched as she kept talking, pacing like she was giving a speech. "You could have done more with your life. You could have worked harder, saved more, planned better. You can't keep expecting me to help you. I have my own life now." I nodded slowly, not trusting my voice. She'd grown so confident, so sure of herself. I remember when that confidence was something I prayed for, but I never imagined it would be used to cut me down. "You know," I finally whispered, "I'm proud of you. You've built a good life. I just wish—" She interrupted with a wave of her hand. "Don't make this about feelings, Mom. It's just reality. You can't depend on anyone forever." She glanced at her watch. Gold, glittering, probably worth more than my entire month's pension. "I have to go," she said. "I just wanted to check if you needed—" "Well, never mind. You'll figure it out." Then she was gone. The door closed behind her, leaving that faint perfume in the air, sharp, cold, and heavy. I stared at the door for a long time, my body frozen. It felt like I'd just watched a stranger walk out of my home wearing my daughter's face. When I finally sat down, the old couch creaked under my weight. The silence returned, louder this time. My eyes burned, but I didn't cry, not yet. Instead, I looked around at the things I'd built with my hands. The chipped photo frame, the little sewing box, the clock that still ticked no matter how much time passed. Every corner of this house had a piece of me in it. Every scratch, every mark. It told a story she'd forgotten. And maybe she was right. Maybe I was pathetic, but not in the way she thought. I was pathetic for believing that love alone could be enough. That sacrifices never went unnoticed. That a mother's heart couldn't be broken by her own child's words. The wind rattled the window and I stood up slowly, wiping my face. "No," I whispered to the empty room. "I'm not pathetic." I walked to the window and looked out at the quiet street, at the leaves swirling in the autumn light. My reflection stared back. Older, yes, but not broken. A faint, defiant smile touched my lips. "She'll regret those words one day," I murmured. And in that moment, something deep inside me, something I thought had died, began to wake up again. That night, I couldn't sleep. Her words echoed in the quiet. Pathetic, pathetic, pathetic. Every syllable replayed like a song I never wanted to hear again. I sat by the window until dawn, staring at the world outside and wondering where I went wrong. When did I stop being her hero? When did I become the woman she was ashamed of? My mind drifted back, years ago, to a time when the world felt lighter. When I was younger, stronger, and had dreams of my own. Back then, it was just the two of us. Her father had walked out when she was 4. I remember that day like it was yesterday. The sound of the door slamming, the smell of rain, the tiny voice asking, "Mommy, is Daddy coming back?" He didn't, but I told her he would. I had to, so I learned to do it all alone. I took cleaning jobs, houses, offices, even a school at one point. Anything that would pay for her shoes, her books, her food. I'd come home with aching feet and raw hands, but seeing her asleep with her little teddy bear made it all worth it. I used to whisper to her as she slept, "You're going to be somebody, baby. You're going to have a life better than mine." And she did. Every morning before work, I'd pack her lunch, press her uniform, and make sure her hair was perfect. She'd smile, kiss my cheek, and say, "I love you. Mommy!" That smile kept me going, but as she got older, things started to change. The world she wanted began to grow beyond me. Fancy clothes, expensive schools, friends who lived in houses that looked like castles. I couldn't give her those things, but I tried. I picked up extra shifts, sometimes skipped meals, just to keep her dreams alive. There were nights I'd sit at the kitchen table, sewing torn uniforms by candlelight, my eyes half closed from exhaustion. The neighbors thought I was foolish. They said I spoiled her too much. But what do they know about a mother's love? One winter, I remember she got sick, and I couldn't afford the full treatment. So I sold my wedding ring, the only thing I had left from a marriage that had broken me, just to pay for her medicine. I never told her that. She was too young, too innocent, and when she finally graduated, standing on that stage in her cap and gown, I cried harder than I ever had. Not because I was sad, but because I thought, we made it. I thought the sacrifices had meaning, that all the sleepless nights, the hunger, the pain, they'd built something beautiful. But now, sitting here years later, I wonder if maybe I gave her too much. Maybe by protecting her from struggle, I stole her ability to see how far we came. I glance at the photo on the wall, her graduation day, my arm around her shoulders, her smile so bright. It's funny, she never hung that picture in her apartment. The memory stings, but it also fuels something inside me. She might not remember what I gave, but I do, because behind every pathetic woman she sees, there's a mother who gave everything so her child would never know what it means to go without. I lean back in my chair, eyes burning but steady. "She'll remember one day," I whisper. And when she does, she'll finally understand what those years cost me. The first time I realized my daughter was ashamed of me, it wasn't because of what she said. It was because of what she didn't. It was a Friday evening, warm and breezy, and she'd invited me to her company's dinner. "It's casual, Mom," she said. "Just wear something nice." I remember standing in front of the mirror for hours, trying on every dress I owned. None of them felt right. I finally settled on a simple blue blouse and the black skirt I'd saved for special occasions. I even pinned my hair up the way she liked when she was little. When I arrived, the restaurant glowed with golden lights, the kind that made everything look polished and perfect. I spotted her across the room, confident, radiant, surrounded by people who looked like they belonged in magazines. For a moment, I hesitated. My shoes suddenly felt too plain, my hands too rough. But I smiled anyway and walked toward her. She saw me, and for just a split second, her face froze, like she hadn't expected me to really show up. Then she smiled, tight and nervous. "Mom, you made it." She introduced me quickly to her colleagues. "This is my mother," she said, her voice airy. "She's retired now, used to do cleaning work. Used to do cleaning work. Not used to clean so I could stand here in this restaurant tonight." The people around us smiled politely. One of them said, "That's admirable," in a tone that meant anything but. I felt my cheeks grow warm. My throat tightened, but I forced a smile and nodded. "Yes, I used to clean offices. Nothing fancy, but it helped pay for her education." My daughter's eyes darted away. She laughed too quickly, changed the subject. I stood there for a while, listening to her talk about her projects, her clients, her travels, all the things I'd never had the chance to see. I clapped softly when others laughed, tried to fit in, tried not to notice how she avoided looking directly at me. Dinner felt longer than it should have. When it finally ended, she walked me to the parking lot. The night air was cool and I could hear the hum of traffic in the distance. "Mom," she began, "maybe next time. You don't have to come to these events. It's really not your scene." I turned to her confused. "I thought you wanted me there." She hesitated, then sighed. "It's just, I don't want people to feel awkward. You know how people can be?" I knew. I'd known all night. I nodded slowly. "Of course," I said. "You don't have to explain." She hugged me quickly. The kind of hug you give out of obligation, not affection, then hurried back to her friends waiting by the door. I stood there for a moment, my arms still half raised before letting them fall. On the way home, I stopped by a diner and ordered a cup of coffee just to delay going back to my empty house. As I stirred the sugar into the cup, I heard laughter from a nearby table. 2 young women were showing each other photos on their phones. "That's my mom," one said proudly. Her tone was soft, filled with affection. I looked down at my cup and smiled faintly. That used to be me, I thought. Later that night, as I was putting my things away, I noticed something. A message from my daughter. It wasn't a thank you. It wasn't, "I'm glad you came." It was just, "Next time, let's keep things simple, okay?" That was the moment I knew. Somewhere along the way, my love had turned into her shame, and I couldn't help but wonder. How long before she stopped calling me Mom altogether? It had been a month since that dinner, a month of silence. No calls, no messages. Just the dull hum of the refrigerator and the sound of the clock marking every lonely hour. I told myself she was busy, that she'd call when things slowed down. But deep down, I already knew better. When the knock came one afternoon, I nearly dropped the dish I was washing. My heart leapt. Maybe she'd come to apologize, to visit, to just be my daughter again. I wiped my hands and opened the door with a hopeful smile. She stood there, phone in hand, her face perfectly made up, eyes hidden behind large sunglasses. Behind her was a car so sleek it barely looked real. "Mom?" she said flatly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "We need to talk." Her tone was sharp, the kind that meant she wasn't here for love. I gestured toward the couch. "Of course, honey, sit down." "I'll make tea," she shook her head. "No, I don't have time." "This won't take long." I paused, towel still in my hand. "All right. What's going on?" She took a deep breath, folded her arms and said, "This house. It's too much for you, Mom. You can't keep up with it. It's old, falling apart, and you're here all alone. You should sell it," I frowned. "Sell it? But this is our home," she sighed impatiently. "Mom, you don't understand. The market's good right now. You could get a nice sum, move into an assisted living community or something. You'd be comfortable." Her words came rehearsed, too smooth, too confident. My heart sank. What would I do with the money? I asked quietly. She hesitated just long enough to reveal the truth. "I could help you manage it, invest it. Maybe use some of it to get a condo downtown. It's a good investment for both of us." There it was. Not concern, convenience. I sat down slowly, my knees weak. "You want me to sell this house so you can buy yourself a condo?" She rolled her eyes. "It's not like that. I'm trying to help you, Mom. You've got no retirement plan, no savings. You're sitting here clinging to a broken house like it's all you've got." My voice trembled as I looked around. The faded wallpaper, the old family photos, the dent on the kitchen table where she'd carved her initials as a little girl. "It is all I've got," I said softly. For a moment, silence filled the room. I thought maybe she'd hear the pain in my voice, but instead, she let out a frustrated laugh. "This is exactly what I mean," she said. "You're stuck in the past. You're holding on to junk instead of thinking about the future." "Your future?" I asked quietly. Her jaw tightened. "You know what? Believe whatever you want. But when this place falls apart and you can't handle it anymore, don't come crying to me." That cut deeper than she realized. I stood there, watching her gather her purse and keys. Her heels clicked across the floor, sharp, deliberate, final. At the door, she turned back one last time. "I tried to help you, Mom, but you can't save people who don't want to be saved." Then she walked out, leaving the door half open behind her. The wind blew in, carrying dust and the faint echo of her car driving away. I closed the door slowly, my hands trembling. The house felt heavier than ever, like the walls themselves had heard every cruel word. I sank into the couch, staring at the empty doorway. The daughter I raised, the child I had starved, worked, and prayed for, had just looked me in the eye and called my life worthless. Tears finally came. Slow, hot, silent, but under them, something else began to stir. A quiet, unfamiliar strength. I wiped my face, straightened up, and looked around my little house. The memories, the years, the sacrifices, they were mine. "She'll see," I whispered, my voice steady. "She'll see who's really pathetic." And as the sunlight streamed through the window, that faint spark inside me burned a little brighter. After that day, I didn't hear from her again. No messages. No calls, just silence, the kind that settles deep inside your bones until even your heartbeat sounds like an echo. At first, I still checked my phone every morning, hoping. I told myself, she'll come around. She'll remember who I am, but weeks turned into months, and hope started to rot like fruit left too long in the sun. One evening, as I sat by the window watching the sunset bleed across the sky, something inside me broke. Or maybe it wasn't breaking. Maybe it was releasing. I looked around that little house, the peeling paint, the old couch, the faint smell of lavender and dust, and realized no one was coming to save me. No one was even looking. And for the first time, that thought didn't scare me. It freed me. That night, I pulled out an old notebook. Inside were memories, grocery lists, scribbled recipes, small dreams I'd written down years ago but never had time for. One of them said, "Start the bakery again one day, just for me." I smiled. A shaky, unfamiliar smile. I hadn't baked in years, not since I started working double shifts to put her through school. But suddenly I could almost smell the sweet warmth of cinnamon rolls and hear the laughter of neighbors I used to share them with. The next morning, I walked into town. My steps were slow but sure. I sold a few old things, jewelry, a TV, some furniture. Things that didn't hold memories anymore. Then I disappeared. No note, no explanation, no trace. I stopped answering the phone. I deleted social media. I left the house. But not in the way she thought I would. I found a small, quiet town 3 hours away, a place where no one knew my name. A little cottage sat by a lake, half hidden by weeping willows. The rent was low, the air smelled clean, and the silence felt I unpacked the few boxes I'd brought. My mother's old recipe book, a framed photo of my daughter as a toddler, and a few clothes. That was all I needed. For the first time in years, I woke up to the sound of birds instead of regret. Days became weeks. I spent mornings kneading dough, afternoons selling fresh bread to locals who started calling me Miss M, and evenings sitting on the porch, watching the water turn gold under the setting sun. Every loaf I baked carried something of my story, a pinch of pain, a measure of peace, and slowly, word spread. People said there was a woman by the lake who baked bread that tasted like home, like love, like forgiveness. Orders came in faster than I could fill them. A local magazine did a small feature. The woman who healed her heart with flour. I didn't expect recognition, but when my daughter saw that article online, I knew because one morning as I was sweeping the porch, I saw a familiar car slow down by the lake. It didn't stop, not yet. But the tinted window lowered just enough for me to see her eyes. Surprised, confused, almost afraid she'd found me. Or maybe she'd finally seen me. Not the broken woman she'd left behind, but someone new. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I simply turned back to my porch, my broom brushing softly against the wood as if saying, "You can't control what you can't reach anymore." The car drove off, tires crunching over gravel, and there I stood, not a mother abandoned, but a woman reborn. I had disappeared from her world, but in truth, I had only just appeared in my own. It started with a single post. A young journalist had stopped by my bakery, just a curious soul passing through town. She'd ordered a loaf of my honey wheat bread and a cup of coffee, and we'd chatted about life, pain, and second chances. She didn't know my name. Not really, but she knew my story, or at least the feeling of it. A week later, she wrote an article titled, "The Woman Who Rose from Heartbreak: How a Small Bakery by the Lake Became a Haven for the Broken." It was honest, poetic, almost sacred. There were no names, no addresses. Just a story of a woman who rebuilt her life from ashes. And then, somehow, it caught fire. People shared it across social media with captions like, "I felt this in my soul," and "This reminds me of my mom." Soon, the local TV station wanted to do a feature, a short documentary called Bread of Healing. I hesitated. I didn't want fame. I just wanted peace. But something in my heart whispered, maybe this is what you were meant for. Not revenge, but redemption. So I said yes. The day the story aired, my face appeared on television for the first time in years. The camera captured me in soft morning light, flour on my hands, a gentle smile, the lake shimmering behind me. The narrator spoke over the footage. After being cast aside by her own family, she chose not bitterness but beauty. She turned her pain into purpose, and now her bread feeds more than bodies. It feeds hearts. I didn't realize what was happening beyond that small lakeside world, but my daughter did. She was at a high-end brunch in the city, surrounded by friends. When someone's phone buzzed, "Hey, isn't this your mom?" one of them said, half laughing, half intrigued. The screen showed me my face, smiling softly beneath the headline, "Meet the woman whose story is melting millions of hearts." They all turned to her, eyes wide. Her fork froze midair. She forced a smile, said something about how it was a coincidence, but her hands trembled because suddenly, the woman she'd dismissed as pathetic was being celebrated as powerful. The same face she couldn't stand to be seen with was now the one everyone admired. Within days, the video had millions of views. People commented things like, "This woman reminds me of everything good in the world. Her daughter must be so proud." What? A lesson in grace and strength, and that last one, that hit her hardest, because pride was the one thing she no longer had. Then came the storm. An old neighbor recognized her from the story and mentioned my daughter's name in a comment. Within hours, the internet connected the dots. Screenshots spread. The narrative flipped. Headlines changed tone. Successful influencer. Estranged from mother who built a life alone. The forgotten woman behind her daughter's fame. Her brand sponsors started calling, asking questions she didn't want to answer. Her image, once polished and perfect, started to crack under the weight of the truth. And while she scrambled to control the narrative, I just kept baking. Loaves sold out faster than ever. People drove from neighboring towns, sometimes just to say, "Thank you for showing us that dignity doesn't need revenge." One evening, as I locked up the bakery, I saw the sunset spill across the lake, that same shade of gold that used to remind me of her hair when she was little. And for a moment, I felt tears prick my eyes, not of anger, of release, because in the strangest, quietest way, the world had avenged me, without me raising my voice. The truth had found its way home. I didn't need to humiliate her. Life had already written the perfect symmetry. The daughter who once hid from her mother's shadow now lived beneath it, and somewhere in that irony, that beautiful, painful irony, I finally felt peace. But fate wasn't finished yet, because just when I thought the story had settled, I received a letter, handwritten, shaky pen strokes from her. It began with 3 words that stopped my breath. Mom, I'm sorry. The letter sat in my trembling hands for nearly an hour before I opened it. The ink had smudged in places, maybe from tears, maybe from haste. It was the first time I'd seen her handwriting in months. Each loop and curve carried a lifetime of memories. Mom, I'm sorry. I saw the news. I saw you. I don't even know where to begin. Those words, they melted the quiet space around me. The walls of the little bakery seemed to breathe with me, heavy with the weight of everything left unsaid. She wrote about how ashamed she was, how she couldn't sleep after the story aired, how her friends, the ones she used to impress, had looked at her differently now, how she realized that every compliment she ever chased meant nothing compared to the look of pride she once saw in my eyes. I called you pathetic, but I see now. I was describing myself. I sat there, the letter trembling in my lap, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I just felt still, like the ache had finally settled into something softer. Acceptance. Maybe. The next morning, I locked the bakery early and took a bus to the city. Not out of spite, not out of duty, but out of love that still refused to die. When I arrived at her apartment, I hesitated outside the door, the same door I'd once been turned away from, but before I could knock, it opened. She stood there, makeup smeared, eyes swollen, a shell of the proud woman she used to be, and when her eyes met mine, she broke. Mom. It was barely a whisper. Then suddenly she was in my arms, sobbing like a child again. All the anger I'd carried, all the sleepless nights, all the tears I'd buried beneath work and forgiveness, they dissolved in that one fragile moment. I held her as tightly as I did the day she was born. I'm so sorry, she said between sobs. I was so cruel, and for what? To feel important? To look strong? I lost you, Mom. I lost the only person who ever loved me without condition. Her voice cracked, her body shaking. And for the first time in years, I saw not the successful woman she'd become, but the little girl who used to run into my arms after school, clutching a crayon drawing that said, I love you. Mommy, I cupped her face and whispered, we all lose ourselves trying to be seen. But real strength isn't in pride. It's in love. She cried harder. I don't deserve your forgiveness, I smiled, tears tracing my cheeks. No one ever does. But love gives it anyway. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was holy. And in that quiet, I realized forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It redeems it. A few weeks later, she came to visit the bakery. She didn't come with cameras or friends, just herself. Humble. Quiet change. She sat at a corner table, helping me knead the dough like she used to when she was small. The regulars smiled at her, recognizing her from the news, but for the first time, she didn't flinch or hide. She just smiled back, proud, not of fame, but of home. As the sun dipped below the lake, she looked up at me and said softly, You were never pathetic. Mom, you were everything I wish I could be. I reached across the table, brushing the flour from her fingers. And now, I said, maybe you finally are. Outside, the bakery's sign flickered in the twilight, Mary's bread of healing, and I realized something beautiful. I hadn't just built a bakery. I'd built a bridge, one between pain and forgiveness, between loss and rebirth. The world had found me through tragedy, but my daughter, she found me through love. And as we sat there in the fading light, side by side, hands dusted in flour and peace, I thought, maybe the greatest revenge is simply living so fully that forgiveness becomes your victory. End of story. You're pathetic, my daughter said. 2 months later, she saw my face on the news.